office as the most unpopular of at least the last 7 newly elected presidents, according to opinion polls. Right now, away from the happenings in the U.S., we will also be following the happenings at the Supreme Court. The newly appointed leadership of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is being sworn in. Wafula Chebukati will be leading the new team expected to oversee the August election. We are also keeping tabs on the rallies being organized to rally voters to register. President Uhuru Kenyatta is in Isiolo and will later be in Nyeri County. Court leader Raila Odinga is in Homa Bay, while Deputy President William Ruto will be rallying the public in Bomet and Kericho. Now, many thanks for staying with us here on News Center as we continue our detailed coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 45th President of the United States. Of course, the ceremony expected to take place tonight in Washington. It is 8 hours behind us. That ceremony is expected to take place at 8 p.m. Kenyan time. And we want to talk more about that presidency. And in studio, I am with Jarvis Bigambo, who is a governance specialist. And we also have Elijah Munyi, who is a professor at USIU here in Nairobi. And let's just shift gears a bit. We have been talking about President-elect Donald Trump. Let's talk about outgoing President, Barack Obama, about his legacy. And Professor, what to you would you say would be among his biggest accomplishments? What really makes his legacy a tall one?
Osama, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. I think we've forgotten how big of an issue Osama bin Laden was. Mm-hmm. And Obama, in his very professorial way, took him out. And I think it's befitting really to sort of pay tribute to how he did it also. Right. I think it was an act of courage. Mm-hmm. It was an act that was enacted using drones, which has become very much associated with Obama. Mm-hmm. It's an act which was done very stealthily, mm-hmm. In the way that the former President Bush, not the bravado kind of way, very right. stealthily. So it's very Obama-like. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that is going to mark him forever. And as a result of the taking out of Osama, mm-hmm. Al-Qaeda has Al-Qaeda is not now the biggest issue. So mm-hmm. Al-Qaeda was really big. Now we are talking about ISIS, but I think the getting out of Osama has mm-hmm. really sort of changed the world scene on terror. Right. So Al-Qaeda is a smaller group now. It's right. disorganized, and I think Obama takes a lot of credit for
right.
that.
And for some reason, as you rightly say, the Osama issue seems to have been overshadowed by other events. What to you, Jarvis, stands out in the Obama legacy?
Well, the number of Obama's accomplishments mm-hmm. are more than the number of fingers on my two hands. To name but a few, one, Obama managed to end the Iraqi war. Mm-hmm. Obama managed to end the Afghan war. And by that, of course, he managed to end that which George W. Bush had commenced. Mm-hmm. Remember, Bush took the American troops to the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Obama was able to negotiate mm-hmm. With Iran on the issue of the nuclear warheads mm-hmm. and missiles. And I think that's something that he did it in a very critical way without really resolving to use the force of arms, mm-hmm. which they could have easily. Perhaps with the benefit of imagination, if such was the opportunity in the hands of George Walker Bush, then possibly Iran also could have faced troops on the ground. Mm-hmm. Much more than that, of course, we know very well that today, more than 30 million Americans stand to benefit from universal health care, mm-hmm. which is credited to Barack Hussein Obama. William Jefferson Clinton tried to achieve or tried to succeed with mm-hmm. the issue of universal health care. Mm-hmm. He succeeded perfectly. And even Clinton's predecessors. You realize then that the issue of universal health, much as today it stands seriously in the storm of being vanquished by the Trump administration. Right. But it is something that has helped far too many Americans mm-hmm. who faced death in the absence of a healthcare system. Mm-hmm. Much more than that, you realize too that when it comes to positioning America in terms of significant international partnership, his focus on international engagements and trade agreements, you realize too that whether it was the impact of the U.S. or the effect of the U.S. or the World Economic Forum that were there over the years,
Right.
whether it's a question of seeing that they engage with other emerging global economic, powerhouses like China, and the issue, of course, of relations with Russia.
Right.
Also, something that he tried to manage in a very brilliant way. For instance, look at what Mitt Romney, one time Obama challenger, said that Russia is, to him, the most critical geopolitical foe to the United States. Today, as Trump comes in, Trump, in his own wisdom, or perhaps in the absence of it, considers Russia as a possible ally. And we know very well that yes, Russia is a is an economic power on the decline, not on the rise. But of course, one has to look at it with skepticism, the kind of interest that Trump has with Russia.
All right, and all right.
Yes.
Just finish.
So when you look at all these, amongst other issues, you realize, for example, how Obama has tried to work on the issue of, or the Obama administration, the issue of handling graft across the world, or trying to stop individuals who are known to be corrupt from having, free space to operate in the U.S.
Right.
is also something that has put a spotlight on good governance. And I think we must give credit where it's due.
All right, and later on maybe we'll focus on U.S.-Africa relations during his term. But I think the most obvious legacy about Obama is him being the first ever, black man, black person, the most apparent, at least.
Well, I agree with you, because across the history of the U.S., Abraham Lincoln was considered to be a black president because of how he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Bill Clinton as well, because he favored blacks. But Barack Obama knew history. And I say Barack Obama knows history because Donald Trump doesn't know history. He has no idea about history. He doesn't know even that when the Mayflower was docking in Massachusetts, and the immigrants and the slaves disembarking the Mayflower, they began the work of constructing America, where Donald Trump is going to have as his home, the White House. It was built by slaves.
Right, and let me bring in Prof. and just talk about immigration policy, even as we speak about all this during the Obama administration. First of all, first ever black president, but during his term, we've seen really what we can say a deterioration in racial relations in the U.S. We saw a lot of black killings. What would you describe his influence on racial relations and immigration during his term?
I think what we've learned from Obama being labeled as a black president is this sort of very difficult institutionalization of racial problems in the United States. And I think whether it is us in Kenya or it's the black people in the United States, there was a lot of expectation on what it meant to have a person with a dark color as president. But obviously, even Obama himself, as people got shot by police several times, and he kept on issuing speeches and he would go out there and cry. But actually, those kind of acts made it look that he's actually quite impotent in dealing with the issue.
And not very decisive and forceful on
not very forceful, because I think he knows what he would like to do. But he's curtailed by the institutional setups, Congress, whether it's Congress or whether it's the Constitution, the rights to bear guns and things like that. So I think it's a reminder of the sort of institutional constraints that any president finds himself in. So the most that Obama could do is really speak very eloquently to, and especially as himself, somebody who has faced this kind of racial discrimination, and hope that people would take something from that. But for reforming the police, for instance, I think he wasn't able to do a lot. I mean, in the US, cutting on gun ownership, he's tried it, and he's not been very successful. And I'm afraid even when Clinton was coming up, it was a very divisive issue. Yeah, so I don't expect also Trump to do much on that.
Okay, and just sticking with that card and speaking about U.S. Africa relations during his term. I mean, during the Clinton administration era, we saw a lot of opportunities grow for Africa. We saw the African Growth and Opportunities Act. We saw that policy on AIDS, is it PEPFAR or something? PEPFAR. Can we say that there was much progress? And I think a lot was expected on this particular, front, with him having his roots in Kenya. Could we say there was much that the continent benefited in terms of...
I think there was, again, more expectation than probably is delivered. But Obama has done very good things that are not very obvious. One is AGOA, of course. AGOA has been extended. And during his presidency, now AGOA has been extended up to 2025. I don't think, we might disagree with Jarvis here, but I don't think AGOA is going to be affected. Partly because the kind of trade, the composition of the trade we have with the United States selling textiles is not so major as to be seen as a major cause or source of competition for U.S. production.
Right.
So I think we will survive, and AGOA will go on. And of course, legally,
but possibly not thrive.
Well, thriving is interesting because thriving would mean we are doing too well. If our exports to the United States grew too much to the point that every store you go to, it's a Kenyan-made garment, then we would get into problems, which puts us in a sort of interesting position. So I would say let's grow it and see what happens.
All right. And just before we move on, I'd like your input on the same with regards to the Obama, policies around U.S.-African relations, opportunities for the African
Just
continent.
Before I speak to that, I think a point that was earlier made by Professor, that the much Obama could do was to cry and speak eloquently. I think I would want to disagree on that because his speaking was not just a question of demonstrating his celebrated eloquence, but I think a passionate executive appeal to Congress and yes, to the people that I think time has come where they must revise or review or rethink the issue of gun ownership. For instance, when he delivered his remarks at Tucson or his remarks at Charleston, tell us that one thing, this is a president who realizes, yes, there are a couple of institutional encumbrances, but that the people have the power in them to determine through their representatives in Washington to see how this and why this must be reviewed. Of course, you see that there is a difference there with Trump, who thinks that we need to have more guns in the hands of people.
And
now,